It's really has
Worked out pretty well. Worked out pretty well for us so far.
Right?
Yeah, in fact, I think I
Did
did.
more than one rights and what you did.
Yeah, you sent me something. My bill was $47.
Basic charge.
Didn't want to mix business.
Well, anyone that tends to speak, it helps the mayor know who you are. Oh, no, haven't met mayor before.
Found beer bottles on his house, so.
You borrowed a lot more of them.
Twice.
Yeah.
Happily.
Since this morning. I
I try to help with the updates, but
at least look it over what I yeah. I guess I'm like, oh my gosh, I can go, okay, but I was at work and then they cooked dinner, so it's all right, I'm done.
no, usually we tried to put as many signs up as we could.
Yeah,
Watch him run though.
Right, right.
Really getting tired. You understand? Oh, there is one.
That's what happened in my season.
that's after my
Signing
kids.
too many.
Mhm.
Oh, that's what I get for being the last one to sit
You
down.
got the good one, didn't you? Almost as good as a whoopee cushion.
Almost.
Almost, yeah.
You have more space now. Oh, yeah. So.
All right, 6 o'clock. Meeting started. Thank you all very much for coming in tonight. I would invite you all to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You. And we have everyone here. All right, public comments section. This is an opportunity for members of the audience to address the council. So is there anyone that has anything they would like to bring up to city council that's not already on the agenda? All right, thank you. There have been some changes to the agenda, and those were noted on the agenda here, starting, I guess that was yesterday. We had some changes. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. So first and a second, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Moving right along. All right, we do have some guests in tonight. So we have a presentation from Mark Johnson. Mark,
You do that here, over there, what's the?
stand up right where you are if you like.
Okay.
Just make sure you introduce yourself so we can get you in the records.
For the record, Mark Johnson, I do government affairs work for the Port of Cascade Lock, so thank you for the chance to talk to you all tonight. What I'd like to talk about is the bridge, obviously. It's a key part of what the port does, and obviously you all are very familiar with the bridge and its vital importance to the region and so forth. So the port is going to be actively working in the Washington legislature and the Oregon legislature during their next sessions in pursuit of some funding that will allow us to begin the process of making some much needed structural strengthening and refurbishing to the bridge. As you probably can, there's a slide. I don't know if you've had a chance to look through all this. There's a lot of information there, but this bridge, of course, like the bridge at Hood River, is almost 100 years old, 1926. Similar bridges, similar genre, very different bridges though structurally. The bridge at Hood River absolutely needs to be replaced. And there's a process underway to make that happen. I'm not sure if you've been following or not, but they've created a bi-state bridge authority down there between Klickitat County and the interests on the Oregon side there at Hood River and so forth that will be taking over the construction of the new bridge. The funds will flow through that new authority. It won't go to the Port of Hood River. They'll operate, they will level tolls and all that sort of stuff. Bridge at Cascade, or the Bridge of the Gods, doesn't need to be replaced. It's got good bones, if you will. But however, there are needs for some structural improvements that we're going to need to seek outside funding to make that happen. Tolling alone just does not allow that kind of fund acquisition to happen. So what you see in front of you here is a diagram or a slide that our bridge engineer has put together, pointing out some of the areas that need to be focused on. And the process is going to begin with a need for, first of all, some seismic analysis and seismic strengthening. As you can imagine, anytime you do a remodel on a house, you want to start with the foundation first rather than start, working on the embellishments on top of the house. So that's the plan. And the price tag on this work, or this phase of this work, is $12 million is our estimate for this. The plan is to ask both Oregon and Washington to share equally in that. It'd be $6 million per state. This will allow us to do a full analysis, do all of the structural analysis, to run the numbers, have our engineer and his team really do a deep dive into the again, just the seismic resiliency and see exactly what needs to be done. But just as an example, there are bearings on each one of those concrete columns that the structure sits on. Now, those are the original bearings, meaning you've got a really rigid connection point. Technology nowadays, they make bearings that allow a structure to shift a bit in the case that you would get some sort of seismic tremors or something. So it allows a structure to go with the flow a bit, just like they have in high-rise buildings and so forth. They don't stand rigid, they just move a bit, and that's how they weather a quake. So that's an example of the type of thing that we could do with that $12 million too. In addition, some of the gusset plates can be painted and refinished and so forth and so on. That'll free us up then to be able to really, at the end of this phase, we'll have a good structural analysis of the bridge that we can go out for the next phase, which is going to be some more structural strengthening, because as you can imagine, the loads that were anticipated in 1926 are very different than the type of loads that go across that bridge every day when you start talking about semis and so forth and so on. And ultimately, what we want to work towards, and maybe you can appreciate this, is some kind of a bike ped lane attached to the bridge would allow us to finally have some connectivity in the recreation industry. I'm sure if you guys have driven on I-84 between here and Hood River, you see all of this wonderful bike pathway and pedestrian pathway that's going to link Hood River clear to the Dow, or pardon me, Portland to the Dow. It's a world-class feature, but there still is no safe way to get across the Columbia River to access you all over here. And that's been a priority of the port for quite some time. And as you know, the Pacific Crest Trail goes across that bridge, and you have thousands of hikers every year. And it's really not a question of when or if, but when something happens, as we have so much traffic on that bridge and pedestrians. So that's the long-term vision, I guess, of this. And that's why we wanted to get this in front of you. We've been talking with your Washington legislative delegation. I had a great meeting with your Senator Wilson, who will be the new senator once redistricting takes effect January 1st. Linda Wilson's going to be your state senator. And of course, you've got Rep. Harris, whose district is sliding over, and then we'll see who wins the other seat that still is to be determined. But working through these fellows, we're talking with the committee chairs up there and so forth. But support from the local level will be really important as we talk to WASDOT and as we talk to the legislative delegation in Olympia. So that's what we would love to have at some point in time. If the Stevenson, City of Stevenson could support this project, support our ask, it would certainly strengthen our hand as we go to Olympia. We've been working closely with the Skamania County Commission too, to keep them appraised what we're doing and working with them. They're supportive of what we're working on. So that in a nutshell is basically kind of where it's at. And I would say long-term, the Port Commission is committed to getting to a point that all of the bridge tolls will stay with the bridge for maintenance and operation. They're on a 10-year plan to do that. That will, if when the port gets to that point, then it opens the port up to be able to apply for and receive federal funding for some of those bigger ticket needs down the road that are going to come up. Right now, the port can't do that because of federal law related to the Federal Highway Department and how transportation funding is divvied out to toll facilities and so forth. But that is a priority because these old bridges are going to continue to need more and more maintenance. We understand that. I think you might recall that we had a brief weight reduction last fall, I think in September or October, because ODOT found some things on the Oregon approach that they wanted the port to address. So we quickly got a plan together, did it, spent $600,000 making those repairs. So again, we're back up to full rating, which is great for the region, obviously, to be able to get, as you talked about, Leanna was saying, your sludge or your stuff from your sewer plant has to get across there somehow to wherever you're taking it, and you need to have full capacity, concrete trucks, log trucks, beer trucks, whatever you're getting across there. We want to make sure that can remain at full capacity, because right now, as you're probably aware, the bridge at Hood River has a weight reduction on it. They're not at full capacity, and I don't see them until they get that new bridge built, that changing just because of the nature of their structure. So with that, be happy to answer any questions and just fill in any more of the blanks that you feel that you might have. But I did want to make sure we had a chance to, there's a lot of good information on this document here, but happy to answer any questions you might have.
you have any timelines on the bike pedestrian?
You know, it really depends on the other phases that need to come first. Because again, this bridge was not designed to just add another structure to it. So again, as we go through the phases, phase one would be the seismic analysis and some of that small seismic work for the $12 million. The next phase would be the actual beefing up the structure to be able to handle the additional weight that would be. The vision is to actually hang it on the east side of the bridge. It'd be like another 10-foot wide, 12-foot wide pathway or whatever to go the whole length of the bridge. So they would be separate from traffic completely for bike and ped. That is the vision. But as soon as possible, if you can imagine.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yesterday would have been a good time frame.
100 years ago.
Yes.
The River, new bridge, are they gonna build that side by side, or are they gonna demolish the bridge first?
I think they're gonna have to build it side by side, and once one is complete, the other one will go away. Yeah. But as you can imagine, that's well, the other thing I would mention too, just in bridge investment terms, you know, this is really a modest investment. You know, the bridge at Hood River is going to be at least $500 million. You know, and in these inflationary times, every year that goes by, you add another 8%. You get down to the I-5 bridge and you're talking multiple billions of dollars and so forth. So for less than that, tens of millions of dollars, you can really get a real good return on investment here to make sure that this bridge is good for the next generation. And that's really what the port's all about.
So you say the bridge has good bones, and obviously the investment is geared towards improving or fixing or maintaining the bridge.
Right.
So what do you see in the horizon as far as when you're going to have to start discussions on replacing this bridge?
You know, I don't know that we're not at that point now. I don't believe that that's a question we would want to have. Like I say, our bridge engineer is of the mind that when these improvements, and there's a timeline and there's some other stuff down there in the bottom of that document there. When that's honestly, I think that's really a generational fix. I mean, for the next 30 to 40 years structurally, and that's the plan. And allow, again, if once the port is at the point where all of those tolls can stay with the bridge, that's a lot more money on an annual basis that can continue to go in there for the painting. I mean, it's just ongoing. Any kind of a time you got a steel structure that's exposed to the atmosphere, you know what happens. It's just kind of continually. Weather's not your friend necessarily, especially here in the gorge. But I would say I don't believe it's a real question right now. And the other issue, obviously, is that there are so many other big ticket items would be ahead of this bridge. It would be a long process. I mean, the bridge at Hood River conversation started clear back about 2015, I think, in terms of really getting serious about that. So that just shows you how incrementally, how long it takes to even move along in that process. So, you know, the state of Washington was tremendously generous in the last session. They gave $75 million towards that work there, but that really only gets them full design, full engineering, and ready to actually put shovels in the ground. But yet shovels in the ground are still dependent upon getting another $400 or $500 million to do the work with. So they're still a ways away from that.
Davey, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just gonna echo what Paul was asking. Paul's wife put in several years of effort on doing the pedestrian crossing, and I was kind of curious as to where we were on that. And two, I mean, we got a 100-year-old bridge. Is that in conflict with, putting in the pedestrian bridge, or yeah? Just curious.
Yeah, a separate structure would be entirely different in terms of location and permitting and access. And the good thing about the work that we're anticipating with this first phase is that, we're not in the water. We're not having to worry about the Corps of Engineers. We're not impacting tribal access and so forth and so on. So once you get into more intrusive work, there's a lot of lead time you have to work through just to be able to even do the work itself. So this would be relatively, I don't want to use the term shovel ready, but we could be working on this really quickly, and especially on the design and engineering part, that work could begin right away.
In the high season, there are oftentimes traffic backups. You get on the bridge, especially on the Oregon side, occasionally on the Washington side. Is addressing that. And that's probably more of the city of Cascade Locks.
Well, it's related. It's port and city, you're right, too, but and it's an ODOT thing on our side as well, you know, and federal funding too, but in a different way, federal highway funding, because one of the plans is to actually move the toll booth back farther away from the bridge to create more space, so you could actually have a full-on separate lane just for breeze-by traffic, like they have at Hood River. I don't know if you've probably seen that. Much more efficient. Right now, everybody has to stop or go through the same line, whether you're a breeze by or just a cash customer. So, and that we have, the port has had the last 3 legislative sessions, a build grant or raise grant application in DC for that intersection there to do that work, as well as some of the other areas to the east end of town where it's getting a lot more commercial and industrial traffic. And we also have recreation stuff going on too, with people trying to ride bikes through there and semis and bikes and all that stuff. So there are plans to try to address that, to make that more efficient. It's just down to dollars and cents, and it's that kind of a situation. You know, one of the ironies, of course, are that this bridge, as well as Hood River, is not a part of either ODOT's, WASDOT's maintenance plan, right? But I'm sure you all appreciate that anytime there's an emergency in the area, the Eagle Creek fire, I remember back when we had the Mosier train derailment back in 2016, they needed those bridges to become I-84 or whatever to get traffic at a point. So when they need them, they want them to be available, but they don't regularly help us with the funding. So that's why we're going directly to legislate, to try to make that ask. And we've been working closely with Curtis King. I'm sure you're aware of him and his position on the Washington Transportation Committee in the Senate, and he's been very, very helpful on this as well. So I feel we've got a good nucleus support in Olympia on this. I'm working the Salem side too, but support from the local level would really be helpful too as we talk to people.
Anyone else?
I'm always curious what support looks like.
I'm sorry,
What does support look like?
in what way?
Asking for support, does that mean like attending meetings or weighing in?
Oh, support. Oh,
Yeah.
Support. A letter support would be wonderful.
Letter.
Yep, that'd be wonderful. We're going to try to give them Sweeney County or city of Cascade Locks, city of Stevenson would be wonderful too, just to make sure all our local governments are aligned on the ask.
And there is a bridge committee, and it consists of representatives from Port of Cascade Locks, as well as Bob Hamlin, Kevin Waters, and myself.
Correct.
So we're sort of kept up to date on what the process is on these and what projects are going on.
Exactly. Yeah, Leanne's been a great participant in that committee.
And then we're also participating in some of the calls that they have when we're available.
And when would you like this letter?
You know, sometime this fall would be perfect. They start their session in January in Olympia. So sometime in 2022 would be great. Okay, appreciate that.
I guess just keep reminding Leon and we'll get it on the
Okay.
agenda. And
Great.
You can have something drafted for the November meeting.
Sure. Thanks, you guys. Appreciate your consideration.
Thanks for coming in.
You betcha. Thanks, Leanne.
We have Ben. You more or less.
Top after me. Right, this is your second review of the comprehensive plan amendment that was submitted by city staff in 2019. It's been the long road that we described the last time. And the document is there for your approval, the ordinance, the comprehensive plan amendment, as well as
Hang on. I'm out of order. I'd like to open the public hearing at 6:19. Continue with your staff report.
And then the working draft of the capital improvement program list. An example of how this amendment helps tie in all of the various plans that we have together, allows us to give you the long look so that you can prepare your budgets and set timelines and expectations on city staff. So that's all there for you. Since the last meeting, we did our SEPA publication analysis. We got one comment back from the Department of Fish and Wildlife just late this afternoon. They are recommending some changes be included in the comprehensive plan amendment. In two cases. The first one, I was able to talk to her about this a little bit, that seems kind of out of scope with the overall effort. So this proposal hasn't been reviewed by the Planning Commission or recommended by the Planning Commission. It is only recommended by Department of Fish and Wildlife. And while it doesn't appear to be anything on its face that would be opposed by the community, it also hasn't gone through those channels, and it's not directly related to this capital improvement planning effort that we're going through. So it may be something that you asked to put on the shelf until we do another amendment request that might deal with these issues a little bit more. The second request that they're asking for is a little bit more related to capital improvement planning, but with that one, I do feel like we already have policies that say protect these sorts of resources. And so we're doing that as parts of projects. Doesn't necessarily need to be called out in this way. At the same time, it does seem to fit with,
Impose
yeah.
what's already in there. It's not like, oh my gosh, cut this section out and add this.
Yeah. So with those, that's the only new information for you from the last time around.
All right. This is the part where we ask for comments from the public. So if you would like to make any comments on this proposal, this is your chance. Anybody here for this part of it? Okay, hearing none. Okay, so we'll close the public comment portion of this hearing at 6:22. Any additional council or staff discussion?
For me, it makes sense to hold on the ones that just came in, like, I don't know what you guys think, but Ben's idea of waiting, make any changes to this because these haven't gone through the process that we asked for the rest of it. And like it's, that second one doesn't even change.
Doesn't change anything.
No, so I don't see a reason to make those necessarily amendments to what's already been adjusted.
And according to the first one, then don't we do some of that already?
We do.
Anytime a project comes on board,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah,
Right.
In the same way that we do capital improvement.
Right.
But it's not enshrined in
All that.
sort of way.
Right.
So,
But that could be something we could, that's an adjustment, maybe to go for.
and that starts at the planning commission basically, when the application comes in.
Right.
So what
That's
are,
all I
what are
had.
the timeframes on this? I mean, it would have to go through planning first, which would take at least a month. If there's room on the agenda next month. Other than
with
to
These two.
To add this,
to
And-
add these.
Ben was suggesting that the next time there's another amendment request.
Oh, okay. Just
Yeah,
amend
Just add it to
Okay,
the just,
yeah.
yes.
Kick the can of this, table it.
I'd move to approve ordinance 2022-1187, revising a comprehensive plan and adopting the capital improvement program as presented.
Second.
First and second, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, Next, next public hearing is for the 2023 budget. Yeah, let's not just gloss over the fact.
Yeah,
we
that
did
was a
something pretty
huge,
cool.
that was a huge amount of, like, even just going through, like, you can see that a lot of
Oh,
work
this
went
started
in.
pre-COVID.
Yeah, a lot of work
Yeah.
went into that
Yeah.
project, so that's
Thank you,
awesome. I
Ben.
appreciate that, Ben. And everyone who was involved in that,
Yeah.
in this room and not in this room.
Should be lobbying.
Right.
That's so great. Our next public hearing involves the initial 2023 budget. So I'd like to open the public hearing at 6:25. Yeah.
So about that capital improvement program. So in doing the budget, I apologize, there's no staff memo ahead of it highlighting things. We're working on a couple of things. One of them is the software program to present the budget. So having a digital budget book and working with that to convert some of the data. And the earlier council meeting didn't necessarily coincide. So by the November 1st special meeting, all of that should be there. So you have just the raw budget in front of you. And it all balances. One thing that I want to, a couple of things that I want to highlight. One of them is the street fund balances because you're doing $150,000 transfer from the general fund. So, and that is just for operations and maintenance. That doesn't include any capital programs. So it doesn't include any of the paving of gravel roads. It doesn't include anything that's on that CIP. It also doesn't include any of the grants that we may be receiving, which would be a separate project. So the main grant that we did apply for was 100% grant, zero match. So that's good.
So when we get a grant, then you just apply for a supplemental budget to.
Be a budget amendment.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing is in here, let's see. So last time we talked about the salary and COLA, cost of living adjustment for staff, and how we typically use the CPI index, which was, I think, 8.1 this year. So we talked to other cities nearby and far over Washington State and Oregon. And on average, it did vary because some of them had union contracts that were made prior to the inflationary period. And so those would be catching up in further in future years. And others are still continuing to negotiate. And so 5% was sort of one of the numbers that was in the middle where everyone was landing. And so I applied that 5% COLA, as well as I reanalyzed all of the salaries and compared them to a couple of sources. And there were some positions that needed to be adjusted. And so a couple of the positions were adjusted 13%, and some were just adjusted about 2%. And so that would be then on top of that 5% COLA. And all of that data is included in this budget, as well as an additional staff member, as we discussed during our strategic plan. And that person is split between general fund, streets, water, and sewer, because they would be helping out all of those departments. There are some ways, and Carolyn and I discussed, we could just kind of change the time, but I want to make sure that that the cost that is included in the budget is an accurate reflection of the work that's being done. And if it is, then what fixes need to happen to make sure that the revenue streams are matching? Because in the end, so in the budget, there's $308,000 for sales tax for the street fund. And so you have half again that as a transfer to do operations. So there is a little bit of mismatch there. And we'll continue to look at it before the next meeting. So that is all that's included. Another item that I've been talking with the fire chief about is he's looking to retire at the end of the year. And no one has stepped up to say that they wanted to take that position. we're also down a lot of volunteers. It's just the nature of things. And so we're having a challenge recruiting volunteers. So I will also be looking at the volunteer rates, as well as one thing that is not included in the budget is a full-time fire chief slash fill in the blank at a salary range of about $65,000 to $85,000 plus benefits. And so that would be a full-time position. We're looking at possibly having some hazard mitigation or hazardous emergency planning in that position, and trying to fill in other work as well. But right now it would be 100% in the general fund. And while we can fund it for a couple of years, I don't know that we could fund it year over year. It would draw down our balance. So that's sort of where I'm trying to figure out what the sweet spot is for that position. We can look for grant funding for that position, especially if it does emergency management. And then I would also need to talk to Fire District 2 to see what their ability to pay for that position would be as well, because it is a shared department. But it would alleviate some of the challenges. So that's one thing that's not.
Okay, I have a lot of questions
Right.
about the fire,
Oh, yeah.
so.
You know, it's on your staff report.
I think those were the highlights.
Those are the talking points.
Another thing, so in the water sewer budget, I have about $400,000 being transferred from the water sewer fund into the wastewater treatment plant project. A lot of that is because as we're going through these projects, things are failing that are our maintenance parts, not upgrade parts. And so that additional $400,000 is to cover for any of those other additional items that may happen, as well as we're still, so there's a grant that I'll need to finish applying for, but it's the direct federal funding that we received in the spring. But we have to apply for it, and it's $2.5 million. And so that'll cover some of the cost overruns for the wastewater treatment plant. And then I have been letting DOE know that we do have some cost overruns already because of cost escalation. But we have this other source. I would rather use grants over loans as much as we can. And we'll see what else is needed to cover that cost difference. But we also made it, if we have the funds ourselves, I would rather us pay for it than have it go through a loan. But I don't think we have an extra $1 million. So, yet. So that's where it's at.
All right. Any comments from the public? All right. Somebody perking up. I'd like to close the public hearing, or at least the public comment portion at 6:33. If you have thoughts.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts about fire, but one of my first thoughts is, we have District 2. We also have Stevenson Fire. I understand that it's shared, but my question is, does it need to be shared?
As far as, do we need to be a shared
Do we-
department?
Do we need a City of Stevenson Fire Department as opposed to a District 2 and be incorporated into the District 2?
That's a political question.
I know. That's why
That's
that's
why the
why I bring it
politicians-
up.
Right. So there are there's a couple of ways you can go about that. One is to create a regional fire authority. But if the city were to annex into Fire District 2, the way that the process currently goes is, and Ken, if correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe our levy rate decreases by the levy that Fire District 2 is. So if our levy rate is 3 and theirs is 1, our levy rate would drop to 2 because that levy rate, the additional 1 would be charged by Fire District 2 to the city of Stevenson.
Correct.
Right, right.
Yes.
So
What's the downside to it?
for the
we don't
city.
spend that much for
Exactly.
fire. I mean,
Exactly.
that's, yeah. And that's,
Again,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think outside the box on this.
yeah,
We're talking to fire chief for a couple of years and basically trying to sustain that for a couple of years, and we're actually pulling out of places where we probably shouldn't be pulling out of to do it. And so, so why do we do it in the first place as a city? And quite frankly, I like the thought process of a regional fire district as opposed to all of these individual fire districts throughout the county. I think it could be managed much more efficiently, get more bang for the buck as far as budgets go, being able to apply for grants better. I just think there's a lot of benefits to it.
so right now being partnered with the city, they're able to leverage some of the resources we have, like they're able to use the computers that we have. And printers and things. And then we do some of the AP for it as well versus it going through the county. And so I don't know what the county charges for that service, but
Mhm.
we don't charge them for that. So there are some benefits for them to use the city. And I know that the EMS has been providing some of those services as well for special districts.
Yeah.
So that could be a possibility, but I do know that it comes at a cost.
Yes. Well, yeah, everything comes with
Yeah,
cost.
yeah.
But I do appreciate everything that Chief Ferris has done with the department, because he has, Chief Martin before him, and I mean, they've been able to do a great job in protecting the city, so.
I think one thing that, although if it were its own, if the city were annexed into Fire District 2, they would still be able to do a bond for any sort of, like for the new fire hall. I don't know if it would be more beneficial to have the city back that bond or not. We're not large enough to follow bond ratings, things like that, so.
That was my comments.
Okay. Well, okay, so it is, I agree, thinking outside the box. I'm not sure that it's anything that's gonna happen before the budget.
Yeah, I don't know if the box can handle it, but
So they are working on their strategic plan, and there's been some delays on both ends for that. But I feel like that's a good place to also start to determine the direction that the department should go.
I just wanted to bring it up because I agree, it's not something we need to talk about as far as this budget goes, but I think it needs to be on the radar to make sure that we.
Sometimes saying it out loud makes it start to go.
It was a good question. It was a good. Yeah. Do we even, what's the benefit for?
Yep.
So, yeah.
And everybody knows I like to kick the dog, so, there it is.
We don't talk about kicking dollars.
Any other comments?
Is this going?
Any comments? So this is just
This is just an initial public hearing is required by state law.
Well, it was good to see too.
Yeah.
for-
Yes,
for
yeah.
me,
Yeah.
we have a meeting
Going
coming
through
through
it.
it.
Yeah, so November 1st is when we'll have the deep dive into everything. And so in the original scheduled meeting, I should have the budget software up by the end of the week. But
Right.
it's not gonna be necessarily
No.
public facing, so. But it will definitely be up by November 1st.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
Okey-dokey. Sewer plan update.
An update. So, wastewater treatment plant is moving forward. They were able to get dewatered down to the bottom of the lowest point, which is great. So they're starting to build, not just digging. And, I know last month we talked a little bit about some scheduling or schedules getting pushed out on that project. We've been working with the contractor to get their completion back into July of 2023. I think we'll be successful in that. There's been some good ideas getting thrown around. The collections project is very close to being done. You may have experienced the closure today. It's going overnight, but they're doing paving. So paving is a big milestone for these projects. And so they're getting very close on that Rock Creek pump station and the interceptor. So big chunk of Rock Creek Drive is going to be paved. They'll stripe next week. And so they'll be substantially complete shortly thereafter.
And we'll still have good weather for it.
Yeah, they got lucky.
Yeah.
They got lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, we did this in the spring though. Yeah, I know. I don't know. Yeah. May have cost less had our luck come earlier this year rather than later in the year as far as weather goes. The pump station projects, there are 3, Kanaka Fairgrounds and Cascade that we've been talking about as an upcoming project. They're almost done with their 60% plans and had a good conversation with the Port of Skamania. Pat and Doug and I sat down and looked at them. No major concerns from the port on what's being proposed. So that's great. Got the generator ordered at for the Kanaka pump station. That was another scheduling thing we were talking about last month, and we had heard 2 to 3 years out. The PUD has ordered it, and they've got a I think July of 2023 date on it to be delivered. So who knows how accurate that is, but maybe we won't be looking so far out on getting that project going. So that's a good thing as well. Schedules fluctuate a lot in construction. Other than that, that's about where we're at on wastewater. Fish, no, I don't have any update on
No
fish.
damn fish, all right.
No,
I gotta ask.
it's good.
You looking for the steelhead right in Rock Creek area?
I'm asking. I mean, there's that, but I was really,
Yeah. No, nothing new.
all right.
Thank you.
Yeah, nobody has taken me up on going up to
Oh.
tour the
Sorry, David, Serpent, that made him
asking. Sorry. I guess
He's gonna talk to you tonight about that.
Right.
And I want to go as well. Crazy busy.
Well, plus if you've been there before, it's gonna be cool to go down and see the progress. We've been working towards this part for a couple of years now.
So I actually, when my dad wore the last one. So I was down there when the last they were put in before, so I want to go down and see. I mean, I absolutely want to take a tour, so I will be on that list.
it's all good.
Not more than 2 of us at a time.
We can't ever be, no,
Never.
no.
Okay. Thank you, Carolyn. All right, Ben, looks like you're up.
All right, you have in front of you a plan for the Stevenson Urban and Commercial Core Economic Sustainability Strategies or Success. You reviewed it the last time. There were some community concerns related to Western Cascade Avenue the last time. We worked with the property owners down there, and their written comment here stating that the concerns are no longer there as part of your packets. We also worked with the Planning Commission. The draft resolution has been updated to show their support for this plan. And the Stewards of Success Committee updated their memo to coordinate with those property owners on Cascade Avenue too. So the document is there for your approval, and I'll answer questions if you have any.
I'll move to approve resolution 2022-401, adopting the Stevenson Downtown Plan for Success as presented.
I'll second.
First and a second, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
I,
Well done.
Another.
Yes,
well
I
done.
really, that was,
Big.
that
Very
was
well
awesome.
done. Thanks for working through all those issues that came up initially. So appreciate that.
Dave, you ready?
Uh,
You have something?
You guys beat me to it. Go.
Okay, so I think this is why most of you are here, correct? The annexation request, or at least annexation in general. So we did talk at length about this at the last meeting, but we probably do need to rehash it a little bit so that you can kind of see why we found ourselves in this discussion. So what do you have, Liana, for the
So
staff
in
memos?
the staff memo, I did pare it back from what was previously given as far as annexation and the process and everything. I just kind of kept it to a continuation of our discussion. And so at the August 29th meeting, council discussed at length various options for what comes before them for an annexation. So you can accept it, you can reject it, or you can geographically modify it. The challenge with this annexation request is that it is not contiguous on the street frontage. And so it leaves a section of street which would not be covered, which wouldn't be inside city limits. And so that just makes it challenging. I mean, we're not going to drive by, lift our plow, and then put our plow down. But it does cause some challenges. So the first geographic modification was to just include the parcel to the south. And when the property owner did his initial inquiries for the process, they stated that they didn't want to be annexed. And because of the property valuation of the two lots, it wouldn't move forward because the Goodmans the property value for their lot isn't 60% or more of that combined valuation. And so the next step was to look at the annexation all the way to Bone Road, because there was a previous annexation request in 2016, I believe, that was never completed. And I don't know that the city ever received a reason why. And so, and then the property owner moved outside of the area. So we decided staff was directed to reach out to those property owners to see what their interest would be in annexation. And as you see in your staff memo, we wouldn't make 60% to approve it. So the recommendation is to either move forward with accepting the initial annexation as they requested, or to reject the annexation proposal.
So the reason the discussion is so intense is that if you annex an area into the city, there's certain city standards that we're trying to promote, or at least maintain. Streets, water, sewer, and then when we get into storm as well. And then also probably look at like streetlights and such, but a little further down. Sidewalks. But the core things that we want to introduce to an annexed area, because we find that in previously annexed areas where we have not made that a priority, it continues to be a burr in the saddle. How come my road isn't paved? How come I don't have sewer? There's many issues that have come out of not keeping in mind, keeping in the mix city standards. So one of the things that came up is that, okay, so the annexation request was to get city water, but what does that do for city sewer? And then it does, to Leon's point, bring in this incontiguous, hard to maintain situation. So the very blunt question was, what's in it for the city? What makes this an attractive opportunity? As you know, we are stuck in a finite area. There's only so many spaces that we can eventually annex into all county at this point, but it will run out. On one hand, take advantage of what you can when it comes to growth. But don't, how's the saying go, don't cut off your nose to spite your face. We've got to plan this carefully without the go get it, go get it, go get it. The other part is eventually, as part of our CIP, our capital improvement plan, eventually we will start extending sewer and extending water and extending infrastructure. It may not, and oftentimes will not, coincide with the desires of homeowners within those annexation areas. So find a way to pay for it as the homeowner making the request, find a way to increase the area and find a way to pay for it as a whole, or wait for those services to extend in time. How important is that annexation to you? A developer that came into Trinidad, we will pay for everything and then it's your system. Fair enough. The city didn't have to pay for it, just took ownership of it. So that's the position that we find ourselves in today. We have a request, but we do need to find that balance point, that sweet spot. So that's why I suggested maybe we take a look at finding a way. Are you at all interested in receiving some of these services? The question had to be asked. That's why the question was asked. So that's kind of the lead up to why you got this random question. Ben and I were talking about it. Hey, don't you want a new car? Well, no. Oh, it's really nice. You can have a really nice, no, I didn't know I needed a new car. So I'm sure that it came across as more than a little non sequitur. That's how we found ourselves. That's how you guys found yourself coming here to listen to us about annexation today. So hopefully we've done a good job of describing where we're at. Now, do you guys have any other recollections before we open the floor to questions? Because here's the thing is, it will come up again. Not sure when or why or how, but want to make sure that the discussion was open and frank enough that we have an open conversation instead of a heck no or worse. So really looking forward to hearing your comments if I haven't addressed them already.
Well, one thing I also wanted to point out was 2 years ago, we were planning on doing a deliberate growth strategy, which would include having this conversation at a community level ahead of any annexation driven thing. So we would have all the time to talk about this ahead of time. It is still on our strategic plan to do this. The annexation proposal came in ahead of any of those conversations. And then I even saw a memo from the 70s saying, hey, you should get an annexation policy. So which again is in your packet as a recommendation from the Planning Commission to get an annexation policy, which would then make it easier to have clear definitions and expectations for everyone when they want to annex.
And I did see a lot of shaking heads. I wouldn't mind hearing your concerns, honestly, because it is, like I say, it is going to come up again. We would love to hear your concerns. So does anybody else have any other comments of your recollection of that meeting before we turn it over to the
I think you actually covered it pretty well.
Yeah. Any questions?
It's not a question so much.
So also, it's a thing that I forget all the time. So I'm just going to put it out blanket. If you could help me remember, but the first time you make a comment, introduce yourself and where you're from so that we can get you in the minutes.
Not like where you're from, not like where you're born, but where you live.
Yeah. Please.
The reason being is because the person that's transcribing these is online, so she can't see who's talking.
I just wanted to add a point of clarification on, by the way, I am Michael Spencer Dunn. I live at Cleveland Bone Road. And the reason I wanted to jump in and speak first is that last request
came from the previous owners, previous request for annexation. And they, wonderful person we bought it from, we're still friends. They were well resourced and very pleased to bail on that process and go find something else that was built. So for our use and for our voice, it would come from that process. That's why at the last meeting I said that request should be a moot point, that request for annexation from that property, is we don't want to be part of it. So cost is insane, and I've been happy to just be county residents. Have a few more chickens.
So out of curiosity, there's a water line that runs right down in front of your house and you have a problem with water. So that
Yeah.
water isn't an attraction to you?
Mhm. Water is definitely attractive,
And in this case, there's already a road.
I know.
You ought to see my water bill. You might want to think twice about that.
Yeah, well,
But you also seen the water bills, you guys said it would cost for us to get on the line as well.
yeah,
That's true.
the line, the cost to sign up.
Yeah, as each of you speak, I would appreciate it. So if you're for it, briefly say why. If you're against it, briefly say why.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone here is for it. but
Just
yeah.
in case.
you never know.
I'm done with that. I just wanted to point out that previous request that was a part of the conversation, that those owners moved out and
But the request from the Frank John Stefan Road, that initial request.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was from that person.
Gotcha.
Not
Bill?
There was a 2017.
Yeah.
Request just along the road.
Okay,
And it was the previous owners. of
the ones who,
Spencer's Place.
yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Okay. Am I here?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so we took this up at length a couple of nights ago, and it is one of our top priorities. And I think our general concern is that we don't want to see some sort of checkerboard thing with, different property owners getting different kind of things going on, and it should be contiguous, across the area. So it's a difficult thing to wrestle with. Because, property owners don't want to pay more than they have to. They're just like saying, oh, well, why should I be interested in this? I mean, I'm doing just fine. So, but to grant somebody, to pull them into the city limits, I mean, is that fair to the other property owners, or is that unfair? I mean, so we're still wrestling with a problem. We're going to continue to wrestle with a problem.
Now, Davey, is this, you throwing at the planning commission level?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure that everyone here in the audience knows that.
Oh, sorry.
Davey's a planning commission member, so. Ben.
Yeah, just following up on that, the planning commission did review, they were tasked with reviewing the recommended zoning for the property if it were to be brought into the city. They took on that task and much more. So as Davey said, they talked about it. They provided recommendations for you. Those are on page 211 of your packet. The recommendation was to zone the area R1 if it were to be brought in. To offer words of caution saying that there's no urgency to pursue the wide scale annexation proposal. Let's take time, work with the county on a joint plan, get our annexation policy in place. For this specific request, if you proceed, just do the initial proposal. And if you proceed to require connection to city water immediately and to require future participation in the sewer local improvement district of that property. They didn't address streets or street improvements. And I don't know whether that's because it wasn't on their mind or whether they said don't require anything for street.
Well, we mentioned it, but yeah.
And now it's a meat point.
the grander scale.
Yes.
We still have the original request.
Yes.
On the table, yes. But to keep it as a discussion, I would love if anybody wanted to speak or if they have any thoughts on what brought you here today.
I'm just here to voice, sorry, James Landers, 51 Bone Road. I'm just here to voice that we are sternly against it. My wife and I, we kind of like the county rules, you know, a little more relaxed than city, but also the cost of utilities that you guys basically said to us would be cost prohibitive to us, and I think to a lot of our neighbors, and it would literally force us to kind of sell house and move out. Yeah, I like this place. I'd rather stay here.
The water and sewer in particular.
In particular, yes. Yeah, I like this place. I'd like to stick around a bit longer.
Well, and I wanted to make it clear that it wasn't it might have come across that way. Hey, the city's at the door. And guess what? No, it's more of it came up part of a discussion, a larger discussion. It was important to those sitting at the table to get some thoughts from those that would be involved with all of that. So again, it's more of at this point, it is still the discussion.
And as correct me if I'm wrong, but I think our policy or rules, whatever, is that if you have a working septic system, you don't have to connect to sewer.
So the LID, the local improvement district that would be created to pay for the construction and the extension of that sewer line, they would still be required to pay for their property taxes regardless of whether or not they were connected to sewer.
Okay. We have a guess as to what that.
You're asking the money gal if she has a guess.
That's why they're all here, Bob.
I feel like that information is given, which is why people.
Yeah.
Part of the reason,
Yeah, a good portion.
Yeah.
not all.
Nothing
Yeah.
only, but
So here's some of the costs as far as what it would be. And I only did water and sewer because there's a limit on what we can charge for or assess for an LID, which is the value that the difference in property value after the improvements go in. So I think some of the largest ones would be for the Goodman property, which is requesting to annex. Their portion of the water and sewer would be $231,000. And so the annual payment, because there is a time limit on the length of that LID, would be about $15,000. And so that, you know, if you just do it on a monthly payment, it's about $1,200 a month. And that's for 2 acres.
Question my wife, she wanted to know why it costs to connect, say, up Bone Road where the infrastructure is already in place.
So the water is only $200,000 of this, and it's to install additional fire hydrants. And so it's the cost to install those fire hydrants, and that was just distributed amongst all of the users. The larger portion is sewer. And sewer does not go up Bone Road to service those properties. Sewer is actually behind the properties, and so there's no way to connect. Yeah, so there's no way to connect to sewer for those properties along.
That was another thing. I was a little nervous about getting pantsed with easements and stuff for infrastructure, cutting all through properties and stuff like that.
Any other comments, questions? John?
Yes, when I originally approached the city 2 months ago or so, it was for the 2-acre piece, just John Goodman speaking. I think I've got about $600,000 in bill on, which is like, and smelling salt will wake me up again. And I was looking at getting the 2-acre piece along Frank John's, there in the ravine, annexing the city, which it abuts a piece of property that is part of the city, so it was touching. I was not suggesting this whole thing. I said that's what they needed to do to make a big picture. So I wasn't trying to get all the rest of you guys in there. I was just trying to develop some property I had. That is all.
And a lot of you folks are already grandfathered in. And it's like, well, I've got to go on the bottom of my property, one of my piece of property, and I watch it go by there. When I got here, I had to drill a well, I've got septic and all that. So I don't personally, for the rest of my property, I don't have a need for this. But if I was to sell off a chunk or two to big enough for somebody to develop, then okay, then they should sign up for it. But I'm not for annexing everybody into that at all. I just want my 2-acre piece of all of it.
We forgive you, John.
Yeah.
I'm here on my birthday, by the way.
So then we're gonna go. Yeah, go ahead.
Victoria Stoley, we're 502 Frank Johns. We are the property to the south of Mr. Goodman. And I guess, my husband and I concerns, are the financial aspects. We are actually on city water. We do have city water, but we have our own septic system. And I guess, one of our concerns, just my understanding was, what you had said, he was just trying to get, us and then his property.
No, it wouldn't have to touch you because that piece that goes behind you abuts my property. So
I guess, our concern is just, we're less than an acre. We're like 0.7 something, small potatoes when it comes to other things. But in terms of just, forcing us into doing it, what is the probability or likelihood of that? Because I'm wondering if kind of the whole 60% required in order for that to be approved, is it not meeting that because he doesn't have any structures on that land yet? Or, we have a house and, amenities there. So I'm just trying to get an idea of if that's a real legitimate possibility that we would just be essentially forced to have to do that.
So the challenge is he doesn't have water for that lot to build any residential structures unless he drills a well.
if I sell this 2-acre
Right.
piece
Right.
in the county, keep it in the county out of the city, they could put a well on there and septic and it's all been tested and whatnot. That's my other option.
But yeah. But yeah, right now as it stands, the property valuation, you couldn't force things.
But I think you said something important as it stands right now. I think to answer your question requires another question. What timeline are you looking? Because if you're talking about today, yeah. Are you talking about within our lifetime? It could happen.
So one of the things, the ordinance that the city has for people that live outside city limits and are connected to city water is, in essence, it's a privilege that the city can take away. That is a right that they can exercise. That hasn't even been on any of the discussions. So, but that's the only thing that the only tool the city has to force any sort of annexation at this time.
And hopefully we made it very clear, we're not here
No,
to, we're
no,
trying to
no.
force anything.
No, we would love it if you all wanted to be part of the city. I'm a little, why aren't you? We're corporate city. But when I look at these dollar signs, I'm like,
Yeah, it's not even-
I'm Margie Hidalgo and I live at 62 Guide Meridian, and I wrote in a letter, which maybe you read. And I concur with my neighbors that while it wouldn't be so terrible to be annexed, it's too expensive. For our part, it would be almost $700 a month. Besides the already high property taxes, we'd have to leave. And I wish there was a way that we could find a way to honor Mr. Goodman's initial request, because I don't think it was his intention to want to bring all of us in this, because it would really impact us in a very negative manner.
It was.
If it were so expensive, if it were $100 a month, okay, but not 700.
Well, it started out as a, well, what if? Because we do really trying to find some ways to not sink them. So just really just
Then we'd have another.
thinking out loud.
conversation.
Yes, that's why we're all here. Go ahead.
Colleen Watto, I live on 111 Guide Meridian. Thank you for telling me your thoughts on that and trying to make us feel better that you didn't feel that way, because I guess the way it was presented in the letter felt like it was kind of like this information, this annexing cannot be contested if you do not show up and appear. It just felt a little bit, I mean, I lost some sleep that night. So I just might suggest that maybe in the future, when you send out letters, maybe have it be a little bit kinder in your, the way you present it, maybe. That's just a suggestion. Because I totally, like, I see you're part of it, but again, we were almost $600 a month that we were gonna have to pay. So it's a little like, what is happening? I don't understand this. And the only time I heard really about annexing was when they're talking about Russia right now. So we're a little bit nervous.
You bring up a good point. Leona, can you do a bit of a dive on what an improvement district means, what that entails? So it's the money is laid out to put sewer and water along a section, along these proposed annexed areas. The way that it would be paid for once, because it's already been paid for, so now it's how we get paid back.
Right, so in essence, the city would borrow against that local improvement district to pay back a loan to do the work. And so I guess, so the city would do all of I think before we even do any of the work that we need to get the construction cost. Ken, is it similar to a latecomers agreement as far as the process goes?
Yeah, there has to be an analysis of the cost per lot. That is done with a separate hearing, if I recall. And then the parties have a right to appeal those assessments. I think there is sort of a similar process with an LID. Now, I think it is important. I mean, there's a two-part process for the assessment. You outlined in your materials the cost per lot, but again, it's important to note that the cost per lot cannot exceed the increase in value of that lot. So you can't put a lot in an upside down position that they're paying more than they're benefited. That's kind of the rule of thumb. So those dollars, those lots that it says are going to be paying $500 or $600, or the ones that as much as $1,200 or $1,300. If their value of their lots don't increase to that figure, which is where Leona showed us total water sewer, then it's going to be decremented by to a maximum of the increase in the value of the lot. So that's typically something less. A lot of these lots, it would surprise me if it came anywhere close to some of those numbers. But it is a cost, and it's basically pays part of property taxes, so it's a substantial bill. But it's not as simple a process. It's not done in a way that it would be in one meeting with no input.
So Ken, let me ask a question. This is Dave. So if my property value went up $10,000, then that would be the maximum amount then, correct, for me?
Yeah, that would be your cap.
Right. Okay.
But the city's not going to fund an LID if it's that far upside down that it can't afford to do the improvements. So there is a process you have to go through to be able to secure your financing, and so that's important that the numbers come somewhere up, in the neighborhood of these numbers. so you can secure the financing. Now, sometimes the city can apply for loans or grants that would potentially reduce your out of pocket on a project like that, but nevertheless, you still have to get the financing. You have to pay the contractors to do the work.
Question in the back. Yeah, go
Yeah. Gary Marsh from Bone Road, Secretary. I sent an email to them and mentioned a couple points and things that I've got, detailed answers. I really want to appreciate that. We kind of went through a few things. One of my points, though, was exactly what you're talking about. And the reason I brought it up in my email is I'm a former appraiser in Kittitas, Pierce, South King, hundreds of appraisals they did over the years. And for example, my property, one example, would have to go up 76.8% to meet, equalize with the cost of my LID. I don't think that ever happened. And I would really be surprised if most of the properties went up more than 10%. I have a working sewer system, I have a working water system. How would my appraisal change? Secondly, my back 3 acres do not front on Bone Road, no value, right? Same three acres, no extra value. Example, select exhibit A. If you want to add to what he was saying, I can give you more examples, but I think that's a point that this market survey thing would have disclosed a little more how the assessed values, if you're going to go up 10%, pick a number, 40%, pick a number. How does that compare with what you're assessing and how much you're going to throw back into the city's pocket? Because ultimately that's the bottom line of that. So a little bit more data might have been helpful to help sort through all this, preventing us from getting parachuted in, middle of the night, this letter that came in, blowing us all up. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's my opinion. So there you have it. And by the way, yes, I did in my email, I am opposed. Just to be clear.
I'm also opposed. Hans Strauss on 121 Bone numbers that threw at us are absorbent. I mean, I don't know where they come up with, but I can't believe the cost of that. And the other thing, as far as lot value, our lot is moving. Sure, devalued instantly, because this will be the third time this year I'm going to raise my house. So the lot is basically worthless. And I'm totally opposed against this annexation. I mean, I wish John luck getting his part in, but when we got through and into the mix, totally against it.
I'll add the third time about water, and that is the city dumps the water through the culvert under Bone Road onto my property, which then migrates, to everybody else's property. So just so you know where the water comes from, down Bone Road, through the gas line, there's a culvert under Bone Road. It dumps it right on my property. So it's a city, on the city ditch, a city side on El Paso, and it comes right under the water, right under my street to my property. So you talk about water, I see it.
That's where my waterfall comes from.
Ta-da!
Well, they plugged it so it wouldn't go down the city property, but it goes down yours.
Yeah, it comes back into the city down below, and there's no place for it to go. So. Yeah, shame they don't pipe it across, because when they did redo the pipeline, they collect a lot of it. It drains into the eastmost ravine on our property. It's a regular river. Well, right up to that, it's going down there just fine. Well, this just comes down. It actually goes. The ditch goes along the pipeline from Crohn's property on down, and right below El Paso, it comes through the culvert. Yeah.
Wait a minute. No, we take those comments very seriously. This came up at the last meeting, so yeah.
Bone Road is an entirely county road, so any of the culverts or decisions made on that are a county decision, not a city decision.
It's what? I can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry. Bone Road is an entirely county road, including the ditch lines. So any of the decisions that are made about that are made
On
by
the El Pasos?
Yeah,
City.
the right of way is all county right of way. The properties over there are within the city, but the right of way, including all the stormwater management there, is completely.
So El Paso's county too.
El Paso is in the city, but that line is right where the property
But the
line.
culvert goes right under El Paso. It cuts right over and never mind.
It might be city generated water if it's coming off El Paso.
But the county has.
What Ben's
It's
saying
not a
is
culvert.
the county made the decision to put the culvert there. That was not a city choice to put the culvert to run water towards your property or anyone else's
We take
property.
these comments very seriously when it comes to comments and water. We take a
No,
look at where
I
it
mean,
comes
that's,
from, whose
that's
water
what,
it
that's what
is.
you were explaining, right? I know
I
it's
need
hard.
everybody to
Here's the map.
focus. So, any other comments? Yes, we received your letters and we heard your comments as far as being opposed. I didn't see any one of them that showed any interest at all. I'm glad that you took advantage of the time, advantage to come down and speak with us. Does anybody else have any other comments before we move on to the actual application?
Happy birthday, James.
Thank you.
You guys are welcome to stay for this very scintillating meeting. So we're actually gonna move on now to the actual application.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Oh, we appreciate your time too. Seriously,
Yeah,
absolutely. Oh, no, we're getting to next. We wanted to take the time to talk to all of you, but now we're moving on to the actual application. So you're welcome to stay for that part, or you can hear about it later, or that's completely up to you.
Have a beer.
I understand.
Pleasure to you.
Excuse me. I'm Judy Willing.
Hi, Judy.
Sorry, Meridian 52. My question is, now that you're going to discuss it among yourselves, does that mean there's still some question as to whether the annexation will take place?
So the application is specifically for a couple of lots that Mr. Goodman has asked us to take a look at.
That's the only part.
And
that's
that was
discussed.
that was the start of the conversation about, like I said, finding different ways to not say no to that application. So, what if we expanded the area? What if, and there was a couple of what ifs. Those were what if to death, and people are now going to go drink a beer instead of talking about it anymore. So, yes, no, that's what we're back down to now is the original request, and it's only on Mr. Goodman's property. Of course. So there was discussion that was mainly for at the planning commission level, what that final zoning would be.
That was the intent of it. They took on the challenge with both hands though. And so they recommended the zoning. They also recommended processing through the other decisions that you all make in a specific way. So reduce it only to the lot that was requested. Required connection to city water immediately. No water improvements that were identified. And then require the sewer LID waiver. So that those properties have to participate in sewer LID if one is formed in the future. Like I said, there wasn't any specific motion about transportation improvements. So I don't know that they would oppose an action on transportation improvements. And we had a discussion about whether this was after they made this decision, but we had a discussion about whether to require fire hydrants at this time. And it made sense to me for them to not discuss fire hydrants because there's no current structures. So the decision about fire hydrants can be made at land division phase or a future phase of this right away.
So if there was a development of the property, then take a look at it at that time.
So I think that we're back to our original concerns from our last meeting. Annexing in that portion with extension of water. Is that something that you as city council would like to do?
And this only affects Mr. Go.
At this point? But Carolyn had some concerns. You want to Hash over those again.
I was just opening my, my previous report to review my concerns so I could express them. But it would just be Frank John's, or no, Connecticut Creek Road.
No, Frank Johnson.
It is Frank John's Road. Okay. I was just looking here to see in what ways it's doesn't meet standard.
Now, can you pull up the section in question? Yeah. Can you guys see this from over there? When we put that TV in, everybody was sitting over there.
Yeah.
And now everybody's sitting over there. So we've got some ground.
Are you talking about this, or are you talking about from the memo from the 29th?
Portion that's being proposed for annexation.
Yeah. So this is it.
And does that swivel at all?
It does, but it's away from you.
Yeah, if we turn it, it's gonna go to them.
You all have.
I have this, I don't need that.
You know, no, I got it, but I wasn't sure to get.
So
What page is that? Leon?
it's 201.
It's 201.
And maybe my memory is not serving me correctly, but it seemed like we were talking about if we do these things, these have the improvement costs, and cost us X, Y, Z. Is that city costs? Is that costs that are passed on? What was if we say, yeah, let's annex, what does that mean? Because it seems like you were saying that if it's gonna cost a certain amount, you're like, well, then I'm just not gonna be able to do it. That's
Well,
just
when we
not.
first talked about it, you got, numbers were thrown in hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it was like, well, that's more than land's worth. So
Right.
that'd be a silly investment on my part.
Right.
And in respect, if I sold it with the conditions that they would make those changes when they bought it, why would somebody want to?
Who's gonna buy it? Right.
Yeah.
So the biggest cost for the half street improvements, which were to current city standards, again, using Russell as the guideline. Knowing costs have gone up anyway, it's just an estimate. So that was the $629,000 for just that frontage for that one lot.
Russell, like recent construction costs on the Russell improvement.
The 2020.
That might be overvalued
Mhm.
compared to all the things that we did. Are you talking about just,
No, it's just the street portion of Russell.
It's expensive to construct anything.
Mhm.
Yes.
So the sewer line extension, for again, just that frontage was 241,000. That doesn't include the cost to get it there, which would be paid for through other means. But if they had to pay that full cost, it's 241,000 based on the main D extension we just did. So, but again, that's not going to happen overnight. So it's just a matter of time. And so again, that cost will just continue to go up.
so that would bring up why the discussion at the planning level. Yes, sewer good, but it seems like a major roadblock, but if there is an improvement district in the future, they would be obligated to.
Well, didn't the planning say that if somebody says to build on one of the, like, if he sells one of those lots, one of the things they would have to do is they have to hook up to sewer, or is that not true?
Water.
Oh, just water. Okay.
And that was the point of the application. At first.
So if they put in say he sells one of the lots and they
Makes a
build,
lot.
are they gonna have to attach to sewer then, or can they put in a septic system?
Sewer.
I don't think they're close enough for that to be a requirement once they're part of the city. So,
And the planning commission wasn't suggesting requiring that of these, just requiring that regardless of the situation, whether they have their own septic, that they're agreeing to participate in that local improvement to get the sewer line there.
When it happens.
Whenever that happens, they're in it.
Obligated.
They're obligated to be part of that.
Right now. Is this, I know you're highlighting his lots, but I'm just assuming that because our lot is in between, how that sewer line and all of that would have to go, we would be in that as well. So you couldn't necessarily
You
skip.
wouldn't be unless you were, if you were annexed into the city, then you would, but if you would
But
not.
how do you do that?
He is, one of the requirements for annexation is contiguous property. He has contiguous property there.
Okay,
Yours is the intervening property here,
right.
but it doesn't have to come in to the city in order for that property to be annexed.
Because he has attachment to the
Sure.
city.
And so another
Corner.
Another financing mechanism that is used to pay for infrastructure is a latecomers agreement. So I could also see when that line is going up, also doing a latecomers agreement. So anyone that would want to connect to that, and when you do a latecomers agreement, it's similar to an LID in that you do an area. And so you would say the lots in these areas would be assessed this much based on the cost of that. And so if within 20 years, 20 or 40 years, you want to connect to that sewer because your septic failed, or you just want to, then you would have to pay that latecomers fee in addition to system development charges. But that is and then the only reason why you would be forced to connect to city sewer is if you're new development within 300 feet of sewer, or your septic fails and you're within 300 feet of sewer and you don't have,
What is the cost of the water? Just the water itself?
Could bring water to his house.
To meet,
the properties.
to meet this annexation. Because I don't see that here. That's
oh,
what
it's just
prompted
the
it.
hydrant. I just threw an additional hydrant in for $20,000. The water line runs right in front of this property,
But
but I don't know what size.
Yeah, there would
Yeah.
be some development charges and then the cost, reimbursable costs for the city to bring it from the main line to a meter.
So the water line is there. The
Mhm.
issue is he's not annexed into the city, so he can't attach to it. Basically,
Yep.
that's it. That's the issue.
So just some comments on the road, on the streets. I'm looking back at like the report that I did that compared Frank John's, in its current condition as opposed to the standard. It's got the right number of lanes, it's the right drive lane width. The right of way is a bit narrower than we would typically be. Then for standard, like total pavement width is like 14 feet less, but it's because there's no parking lanes, essentially on either side. There's no sidewalks, but there's sidewalks end lower on Frank John's anyway through there. So, I mean, the road's not out of character with the adjacent city road, like the county road is not out of character with the adjacent city road. However, it's adding more substandard road to our already long list of substandard roads. You guys just heard that our street budget is not great, right? So, again, my question is, what's in it for the city? Maybe end this.
Well, I don't know anything, but what I do know is the way that the city and county partnered to get around these issues in the past was that the city didn't annex the territory of the road. And so that's why Bone Road is in the county still, and the properties are in the city. And so we don't take on maintenance responsibilities or improvement responsibilities for the road. We take on the development that's in the city and the population that lives in that development. And I think that that's a double benefit for gas tax distribution. I think Leona can help me out with this too, but gas taxes, state gas taxes are distributed to cities based on population, and they're distributed to counties based on road mileage. And so if we
Get the people on the road.
get the people and not the road, that doesn't impact their budget, and it increases our budget to like nothing in this case, but anyway, that's the way that it's been done in the past. I don't know if that vehicle is still there. for this, and Leon had looked into that, I think some, but that's the way it used to work. I don't know if it can work or you can make that decision now.
So that's an option for us to annex in just the property and not the road as well.
Do we like that? Do we like having to explain the Bone Road isn't our road? Like, I mean, is that,
put in that
like,
culvert.
it's a question for you guys. Do you like that idea?
Not really.
When we have to build a sewer up through it, like, there's that conversation.
And so,
Tammy?
as far as what's in it for the city, there's a quick analysis, the financial analysis for the impact of it. So we get roughly $177 as the property currently stands. This is from the August 29th meeting.
Oh, okay.
So $177 a year as it currently stands. But as stated in their notice of intent, is their goal is to subdivide into 4 lots and then develop those lots. So the city would get the sales tax. The sales tax here, the $180,000, that's the whole 7.7%. So the city would get maybe $1,800, about $2,000. And just from the build and then the property tax increase after development, and that's about $5,000, assuming the 2022 levy rate. So we get $5,000 a year on 4 developed lots, plus the associated per capita increase for single family homes. So the gas tax would go up by 8.
Mhm.
And that would be overtime.
Well,
And then I had
But-
the maintenance costs on the initial proposal would be about $11,000 if we were to take over the road for the street.
so the city comes out ahead.
Not annual. Barely.
Well, it's better than had a meeting go by. I've done sheriff's budgets. I know about meetings. I think from a fiscal standpoint, it's not prudent. That's just me.
Short term.
Whether I would like to have John on the water, I think that'd be awesome if he could. But financially, I don't know if we can do it.
I think I understand your point. Short term. I think long term wise though, 20, 30, 40 years. It would be prudent. We're gonna grow. We're just gonna grow. And we need to figure out a way to annex. That doesn't hurt the people who get annexed. And so that's a longer conversation that needs to be had over a longer period of time. Nothing we can settle tonight.
But for this application,
For this application, I want to find a way to say yes. Especially if it's only impacting Joan, it's not impacting you guys.
feels like the biggest concern is Carolyn's.
The road.
It's bringing in another road that's gonna
Yeah.
go on to that list of needs improved.
And that is a busy road.
Good question. I mean, we want to grow, yes. We keep talking or, it's come up a number of times, affordable housing. Don't we want to grow in the affordable housing kind of idea? Rather than,
So for example, bringing this in as R1 is incongruent with the comp plan. So if we brought it in under the comp plan, it would be, you could fit more homes in that area, presumably at a lower cost.
The proposed density of the annexed area is not going to make it make sense long-term. And it's not like you're going to,
But that was planning's rumination on what the final, their
Zoning was.
no, does the zoning decision come from this meeting?
Well, eventually it will.
But today,
So,
if we approve this annexation, does the zoning have to be determined right now?
You set the expectations, the ordinance to zone it is adopted at the same time as the ordinance to annex it, to officially bring it into the city. So right now you're setting expectations for the people within the potential annexation area, just the one property. And those expectations include zoning at this. Planning's discussion about that was that we just need a blanket policy. And so that discussion doesn't sway or change
Case by case.
case by case.
Right.
Bring it all in under one holding zone. They recommended R1. Make decisions on upzoning later.
Carolyn, what would it take to bring the road up to city standards?
Parking.
$1.6 million.
There you go.
But those are proposed cities.
Those are current city standards.
Which-
Yeah,
Which could change because we're doing a standards review. And we acknowledge that the current city standards, there's only 4 options. And it's really not a one size fits all. Should probably be more to choose from. So would it change that much? Maybe yes, maybe no. We haven't quite gone through that exercise yet. But
Because sticking with the comp plan, getting the maximum density, especially on new annexed areas. Feels like the right way to go.
if what we're doing is going against the big picture that we've been talking about, discussing, we just approved part of it earlier tonight. And then we make a decision half hour later that says, yeah, that's a good idea, but we're not going to do it every time, just sometimes. Doesn't seem.
because we like John and we want to.
We do like John. That's not even a question. That's the thing is if we take it case by case and the person, that's not going, it's not going with the goals and the things that we've set as a council for the staff to go, we're trying to do this for the city. Our goals for the city. And if we keep going against those that we've laid out in black and white for everyone to see, then just doesn't make a ton of sense. So fiscally, I think I'm in the same spot as Dave. It just doesn't, for the city, it doesn't make sense right now. It's not that it never will, but I don't see it right now being there for us. Christie?
Feel the same way.
Am I still on?
But
You are.
Yes.
So I can't speak for the entire planning commission. I mean, we discussed it. And we basically said, well, we don't really have to do anything about it right away. But from a personal perspective, I'm not comfortable with this. So I don't think it addresses the concerns for the future, not the immediate future, but the future. If that makes sense.
You have 2 options on your motion.
Okay.
City
Motion.
council.
I move to reject the annexation proposal.
I second.
First and a second, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
But I would also like to say that we need to find a way to do this.
Right.
We need to figure out the process and make it work for you.
Well, and again, that's why I asked Carolyn about the road, what it would take to bring it up to some standards. Maybe that's something that we need to take a look at on these annexations is, okay, because if it was a new development,
That
the
we would-
developer would have that as part of that development price as bringing that road up to standards.
And
So,
when we're on First Street, when the state wanted to turn that over to us,
Yeah.
we said, we have standards.
Yep,
And,
that's right.
and maybe we should say that to the county.
so. But John will still wave at you, buddy, when you drive by.
But will you
I'm
wave
sure
back
you
at
do
us,
that.
Dave? Will you wave back at us? That's the question.
Thanks for.
Thank you,
Yeah,
John.
Thank you, John.
I think we all want to make it work. We just
We do.
under
That's-
current conditions.
If I sell it, I'll put a well and septic and they'll probably want to be annexed about as much as I want to be. So it's a piece of ground you'll have to fight with later.
There you go.
Yeah.
I wish I could put a well on my property, and I'm in the city.
Yeah, swimming pool. I don't know.
Well, I can say this piece of property.
If I got a pocket for you.
It cost me a lot of money to run the water line from my place to mine. Right,
All right.
yeah.
Okay, so, I believe I mentioned one of the equipment manufacturers went out of business for our fine bubble diffusers.
Thank
And
you all.
so,
Thank you all for coming in.
You want to hear about
Appreciate you
diffusers?
I mean, this is exciting stuff. So in order to, go with, another contractor without, or another, supplier without going through the procurement process, because we don't have time, we need to declare an emergency. And so, staff also, did research and, got 3 quotes as well as the timeline, for those various, suppliers. And we chose Environmental Dynamics International, to procure the fine bubble diffusers, which is, quite a bit more than what the original bid was. But it was, I think, in line or less than the second bid that we received when we initially went out. So,
When we had that breach of contract, what kind of a financial obligation did that?
none, because
For that
they're the ones that
contract.
went out of business. We haven't paid them anything, and we followed the contract as far as notifying them, hey, let us know, give it, we gave them a timeline to respond to us. They never did. We actually gave them a second chance as well, because they gave us a phone call saying we're back in business. And then we asked for like, hey, can you give us a timeline for delivery then?
That's
And they never responded. And so, after that second non-response, I mean, we were continuing with trying to find the quotes and moving through this process with another supplier. But then, we got all the contracts for the backup supplier, and then I issued the letter that our contracts terminated.
Deanna, did we have a performance bond with these guys?
I could check that.
Check
Okay.
it, because if we can make a bond claim, it might be worth submitting, because
Okay.
we are paying a lot more than what they
Right.
bid.
Yeah, I'd like to know if they had some kind of a bond that we could go against. Thank you, Ken.
So are we tabling this or do you still need?
No, I still need a motion.
I move to approve resolution 2022-400, declaring a local emergency for construction due to supplier breach and approval of the contract with Environmental Dynamics International for fine bubble diffusers in the amount of $128,450.
I second.
Second.
First and a second, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
What was the original?
$12.
I want to say it was probably like 74,000.
60%. All right.
Don't quote me.
It's fine.
It was under,
I heard way more, something. As
I mean,
Right. That's way more when you get big numbers. Yeah.
although in the grand scheme of
it's
things.
grand scheme of things, yeah.
All right. Yeah, 90.
So I think at the last council meeting, I talked about doing a contract for utility rate review and complete restructuring and going with FCS. And so this is the contract with FCS Group for that, because it's gonna span budget years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The beauty of this is that not only have we been talking about evaluating the structure of our rate, it is going to give us an in-depth review with time that Leona doesn't have. So this is going to get the review that we need without taxing and asking Leona to drop something else. So this is going to get us a couple of wins along the way.
And these guys are legit. Washougal uses FCS for their own rate setting. And that had a lot of success with them.
There's a, so comparing the two, that FCS group had a lot of similar sized cities, utilities throughout Washington, Oregon. So a lot of
Their track
a lot of
record's
data.
good.
Yeah, track record's good. Yep.
Mr. Mayor, are you ready for a motion? Or
I would entertain a motion at any time.
All right, I would motion to approve the contract with FCS Group for utility rate review and restructuring for an amount not to exceed $56,765, period.
Second.
First and a second, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
I
Leona.
Okay, Leslie, I just allowed you to talk, but I'll tee it up. So for the past, I believe it was the past couple of years, not just last year, the warming shelter has been operating inside Stevenson whenever there's an emergency declared or whenever conditions meet the need for that warming shelter. And so Washington Gorge Action Programs is requesting $15,000 to help fund that warming shelter project.
Where's that at?
That's at the Hegewald Center.
Do we
At the
normally?
Hegewald
It's not,
Center.
it's not the
No,
Hegewald
it's
Center,
the-
but it's
The
it's an old
building
building.
next to
They had to reconnect the water and do some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, first head
Head
start,
start.
head start,
Head
yeah.
start that
Yeah.
building?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually the old senior center.
Yeah.
The Head
Well,
Start
it's over
building. Yeah, the Head Start building is where our emergency homeless shelter is. So this would be the second shelter that we would be operating temporarily in Skamania County.
Leslie, this is Dave Cox.
Hi.
Hi. A question that I have is, I see that Vancouver is getting ready to put up another, or trying to get another third homeless shelter up. And they, and I believe it was Gresham, were looking at using, I think Gresham actually has used palletshelter.com. And the nice thing about those shelters is that they can be palletized and stored, like during the summer season or whatever. And I'm wondering if you guys have taken a look into maybe looking at those types of shelters, and then because they can actually be set up like in the horse barn, the large animal barn, to give them additional protection.
Yeah, so I am a big fan of the pallet shelters. They actually have them in Hood River, and that's kind of what we modeled ourselves after in the past. At this point, it is cost prohibitive for us to do that, but that is something that we are looking at. I am aware. I've had a conversation with the manufacturer of one of them, and we're very interested in pursuing that eventually. But I don't think we would be able to pull that together for this year.
Right.
I also, I think one of the great things about those shelters is that they can be used a little more long-term. So one of the thoughts that I've had with them is, we have a lot of seasonal employment around here. And especially right now, as we're having workforce shortages, it would be wonderful if we had a place for young people who wanted to come and work in Skamania County, who wanted to work at the lodge or at the restaurants, but there's nowhere for them to live. And this could potentially be a solution to that as well, at least on a temporary basis.
Yes. Well, I would like to maybe continue this conversation offline with you.
Okay. I would be happy to continue this conversation.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure. And if I may, I just wanted to share just a little bit more about the shelter. and the work that we're doing there. This will be our 3rd year running this program. And the first year we did use that building by the Hegwald Center, and then COVID happened, and it just wasn't safe to have people in a small enclosed space like that. And so we switched to a model using hotels, and that was very expensive. We're not able to do that again. But last year, I did want to let you know that we did shelter 39 individuals. So that was 20 households made up of 39 individuals. And that, of course, includes some numbers from Klickitat County. So the numbers will be smaller this year since we're focusing just on Skamania County. But my favorite number out of the program that we ran last year is out of those 39 individuals, we had 6 of them who left the shelter and went into permanent housing. So they did not return to homelessness. They were able to come in, get connected to services, and then move on to permanent housing, which is our big goal with this program. And then the last thing that I just wanted to mention is that, Hood River started their shelter services, I think it was like 11 years ago now. And they started theirs because there was a tragedy. Someone passed away from exposure. And we do not want that to happen in our county. So that was the kind of thing that got us rolling, because we know that there are people out there who are exposed to the elements and who need shelter. And so we definitely want to be there to prevent any sort of tragedies and help get people connected to resources. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate you considering our proposal.
Thank you. Liana, where would this money come from?
General fund.
And it's well within the budget.
We aren't having an audit this year. I confirmed that. So there's half of the cost.
I'd move to approve funding for the 2022-23 winter warming shoulder project in the amount of $15,000.
Second.
Oh,
We're fighting now. You have it, your choice.
First choice. All right, there's a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Leslie,
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
have a good night.
Thanks for your patience.
Thank you. And Frank, was it Frank, Mr. Cox?
You
Dave.
can call me anything you want. I'll answer.
Sorry. It's really hard when I'm not in the room, but if you want to maybe get my email address from Leanna, I'd be happy to set up a time to chat with you. I'd love to do that.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. HRA Viva. So this is an employee plan. It's a health reimbursement arrangement and a voluntary employee benefit association, which is basically allows employees to put money aside for medical expenses. Tax-free, but it doesn't expire at the end of the year like a flexible spending account does. It's not a use it or lose it. It can go with you when you retire. And so
I think I got it. I don't know.
Oh, I've got guts over here for the one I got.
Anyway, go ahead.
And so a couple of times staff has discussed some changes, but never voiced a concern so much. And so this time, though, we're going through with amending it. It was last amended, I think, in 2019. And a majority of staff approved the change. And basically what it is it's separating out vacation time on separation as being a cash out versus being paid to the HRA Viva. But if you retire, your vacation time goes to your HRA Viva instead of being cashed out. So that's the difference between the current plan.
Situation is that
It goes to your HRA Viva.
If you retire.
If you
No,
retire, your vacation that you would be paid goes to your HRA Viva if you retire. That's what the current policy is. The current policy also says, though, if you separate from the city, your vacation also goes to your HRA Viva.
right. So if you
But
were
the
like, hey, I'm gonna leave
change-
now, all your vacation would go to your.
Yeah, so the change is to if you separate, not retire, that vacation buyout, you would get paid the cash out.
Paycheck would be, have that.
Why does it have to be one or the other? How come we can't choose it?
We can't, because of the tax benefits. You can't make it
Gotta be
individual
all
choice.
All or none.
So we can't, so there are a lot of
That's
restrictions, like we can't even
How
have,
much it goes in.
right. We
It's
also
like
can't,
25 bucks.
yeah, and the reason why it's so little too is like, so that's all that staff would agree to put in. So staff's putting in 30 and the city's putting in 20, I think, or the other way around. Either way, but you can't even put in a percentage because it has to be equal. Everyone puts in the same. Whereas if you have percentages, people who make more put in more, and it becomes unfair. Or
And you do it as a group. You can't do it as an individual.
correct, because of the tax benefits. Those
Yes.
are the restrictions they put
Yeah,
on it.
and I've got, when I left service with the county, I had all of there was myself and, one other, I can't even remember who it was now, were leaving in that year. And we had to agree together, that this is what we wanted to do. And so I took all of my vacation and all of my sick leave accumulation, and rather than doing cash out, I put it all into Viva. Which has been really nice.
So a poll was taken and staff decided that in the case of separation, they would prefer a
Cash out,
Yes,
which would be taxed.
yes, it's taxed.
And then if they retire, it still goes.
And to fulfill this desire, they need your approval.
Well, how about we, a motion to approve resolution 2022-399, amending the HRA BEBA plans as presented.
Second.
Sure.
Me too.
I'm happy to out of this time.
All right, we have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so there's a lot of words on these next two, but they both kind of say similar things.
All the words.
All the words describing what it is. But we did an on-call request for qualifications for engineers. And so these are two of the contracts that we're signing. One of them is for Geotechnical Resources, Inc. And they do a bunch of the geotech analysis that we need in our very challenging.
Yes.
So that's the first one. And then the following one is Grayling Engineering for water services. So there are more that will be coming as well. These are just the first couple that are ready to go.
Are you guys just gonna second, or are you gonna actually make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the contract with Geotechnical Resources Incorporated, GRI, for on-call design, permitting, and construction support services for geotechnical related projects for a cost not to exceed $20,000.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Pirates tonight.
Just gotta give it.
I know.
And then the next one again is for Grayling for water service.
Oh, Christie.
Dave, you and me after this meeting. I'm gonna make a motion to approve the contract with Grayling Engineering for on-call water design and system planning services for a cost not to exceed $100,000 per budget year.
Second.
Yeah. All right, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Might as well have fun.
Okay, what brain power is left? At 8 o'clock. So this is why part of the reason why too it's a first touch. So the city ran into a challenge recently with its project for the stormwater outfall, in that we needed to have some environmental mitigation for some work we were going to do. And they said, well, you can do a couple of things. You can actually do some work, or you can donate a percentage of the cost of the work to various agencies. And of course, we want to keep it local. And so there's a program that was drafted and was just waiting to be used. And so we're able to use it now and stand it up. And so we will need to put money towards this as mitigation for the outfall. And so this is the first step in that, creating a program. I will also need to do budget, but it's not as impactful right now because it's just the revenues. But we'll.
So is this going to be in the November 1 presentation then, the budget?
It will be, yes. Yes.
That's very pained.
It will be,
Have you got any idea on what kind of money you're talking about?
I think right now it's like $10,000, $11,000.
Did Ben come
So-
up with the acronym?
Of course he did.
Yes, he did.
Ben can tell us what it all means.
So this, yeah. So the gist of the program is to help people get off of their septics and onto city sewer
Okay.
to help improve the water quality. So that's
It's got a official Band-Aid on it. and
executive
everything.
summary.
Don't Google it because it's not what comes up.
So more details.
Yeah, so we're trying to stand this up as a complete program from the start. We have to devote funds into it, trying to develop what it looks like. We've got a adopting resolution there that we're still tweaking, and we've got a document there that we're still tweaking too. We're working with legal counsel to make sure that all the authorities are there appropriately for us to give our money, gift of public, to avoid the gift of public funds prohibitions on us from the state constitution. So
And lending of credit. Both of those are prohibited.
yeah, and lending of credit. And so this program not only does both of those through the stipend. And so we're working that out. We're also working out getting estimates for what it would cost. So you saw the cost concern for just extending the public line that we had here. And then there would be all the private costs that one would have to incur to replumb their house and make the system development charge and make the connection to the line. And so those didn't come up, but you can imagine the surprise that somebody would face if, oh, I have to pay this on my tax bill. And now you're asking me to have all these other costs. Well, this would offer us a way to say, and we'll help you with those other costs. We get it. So that's a lot of money when it comes down to it, just on the system development charge that is currently at around $6,600. And so we're collecting all the costs. We're going to be able to present that to you the next time around, getting estimates from contractors for doing the earthwork outside to decommission a tank, make the connection to the public line, plumbers to disconnect whatever lines go to the backyard and send it to the front yard where the sewer line is, install new cleanouts, and then septic pumpers to pump the tank, decommission the tank as required by Skamania County. So it's going to be a big number. We've got $10,000 to seed this fund coming through the street fund, stormwater fund. The program, as we're working out with Ken, will also allow funds to be brought in from the sewer account. And so that's a bonus, but let's see. How much is it going to cost? How much are you going to offer as a stipend? We'll prepare you to make those decisions. We're also going to collect information on how many systems would qualify under the parameters that we have here so that you would know what the overall lift is. So how much is it going to cost each individual generally? How many individuals are there? How much can you offer to each one? So that's the program as it's under development and should be ready for tweaking or adoption or additional thoughts next time.
You didn't mention what the human scars stands for.
Well, Paul, it's helping encourage adjacent landowners, sewer connection and replumbing stipend.
Thank you.
We all knew you had it. So,
Okay, you do have some informational items in your packet.
One thing I want to highlight is the Washington State Tax Structure Work Group update. So that one is, policy recommendations and legislation for the 2023 legislative session. If you haven't read it, it's a good summary, but it talks about whether we do income tax, change the sales tax, change the property tax structure. So it's
Gives you all the options and lays out what the pluses are. It's pretty,
yeah.
it's pretty cool.
I have a question or a concern about the sheriff's report.
Okay.
How much do we pay per month on that contract? Can you roughly?
So you can pull that up. You
Contract
got the
will
last
add-
4 years.
150 years.
About 15,500
Okay,
ish.
for $15,500, they drove 1,788 miles, and they had 491.75 hours of regular time in the city. From what I know of how the sheriff's office does their time allocations on their timesheets from patrol, I don't believe those figures. And the reason I say that is because we got one citation out of that. So I want to know where all of those hours are. I want to know where all those miles are. That's a lot of miles to be driving in the city of Stevenson. And I want to know where that's at.
And I feel like they're driving invisible cars too, because I never see them.
Well, here's the deal. They come into the city limits, they start their time. Even if they're just going up to the sheriff's office, they'll park their car. If they're in the city, eat lunch, that's all city time. And I think there needs to be a reckoning on it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So isn't the contract next year? And like, do we get it issued an extension so that the new sheriff?
So the request was to do a 6-month, no increase in extension, to give time for the new sheriff to negotiate a contract.
I think there were 3 citations written last month. That includes traffic citations. Quite frankly, I don't buy it. I don't buy it.
Yeah.
There needs to be more traffic enforcement. Yeah, I'm not buying it.
Sound like Dave's volunteering to be on a committee to
I
work
hear
with the
that.
sheriff's department.
Well, I'd be glad to have that conversation with
He
them.
knows somebody
Yeah,
that
I
he
was
can
like, I
talk
feel like
to.
he knows those guys.
Yeah, we.
I know exactly how they do. I set up that spreadsheet right there.
So it's your fault.
I know how it works. And I know where
Several years ago, I think Sheriff Brown came in, and one of our requests was more patrols. It's like, you never ticket anybody, speeding's all over. And the very next month, it was like 35 tickets. And then after that, back to 1 or 2.
So for next month, I would like to see a copy of every city of Stevenson complaint. I don't want medical calls. I want law enforcement related information. Where they are pulling that 400 and some hours. I want to see what complaints those are associated.
You know the data exists.
Pardon?
And you know the data exists.
Absolutely.
It's in the Pioneer.
No. The sheriff's office is a couple of steps above the Pioneer, although I do enjoy reading.
Any other comments on the informational items?
Thank you. Like I said, I like kicking the dog.
We're gonna have to talk about that later.
They say like shake the tree.
I know, right?
Rattle cage?
Yeah, right.
Something that doesn't show up on the log.
All right, staff reports, Ben.
You guys just completed two big projects and really allows us to turn our focus to implementation of your strategic plan. So two of those efforts are well underway. The first one I'll let David report on as the shoreline access and trail planning, how that relates to trail planning for us. The second one is the downtown parking rethinking effort. And so as we've come out of the downtown plan, we already implemented some of its recommendations by reducing the overall amount of parking required of new development. There's two other prongs that we're investigating with that and focusing on. The first is to create a fee in lieu program. And so while you still may be required to provide parking for your new building, you could pay the city a fee in lieu of providing it on your site that the city would use specifically on a program to increase the overall parking supply downtown. And so we're working with the consultants that did our traffic plan. They've got us some preliminary numbers for what it would cost to do several projects that we identified. So now we've got projects, we can say that that's X amount of parking spaces, and those X amount of parking spaces would cost X amount of dollars. Divide one by the other, and that's what a parking space is going to cost.
So then would you be able to utilize that money for, say, the city decided to take some piece of their property and develop into a parking lot for the public, and we would be able to use that money to help maintain that?
Aren't there's three, there's spots circled. They were like, this is where we're looking at doing those lots at in the, yeah.
Okay.
And plans are dreams unless there's money, and this starts getting the money in place. So that would remove that really big barrier that we have, is that we have a lot of small lots downtown. And when you start dividing up how much parking you need for the building that we envision going there through our zoning, there's not enough space for both. And there's not enough profit to do parking garage underneath. And so this fee in lieu will help solve that.
So long as that fee in lieu isn't the next really big barrier.
Right.
We talked about it, and it came up last time about like Napa has that one spot that they've put like a sign out for it. That's like not even their spot, but they just use it as no one can park here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, so the third prong is dealing with how we regulate parking that's on the street. We have the overnight parking prohibitions. We'll look at doing some narrow changes to those parking provisions on street, including standing up a resident parking program, which should also have a fee associated with that goes into that pot of money to make those parking improvements. So that effort is moving forward, and we'll reconvene our parking advisory committee with one of the new planning commission members, Ann Kazee, has volunteered to sit on that committee and help the planning commission interact with that committee. So cool. They embrace those as part of their work planning effort. They also, as two of the immediate things that they'd be working on, they also have taken your list of strategies, tactics to implement and prioritize the annexation policy. I was really encouraged by how quickly we'll be able to do that. They have a really good understanding of the annexation process and the needs of the city. And so I think that they will be great for that. I would love to broaden that out to include a city council member acting as a liaison between the planning commission and the city council on that topic. I think it's a focused effort that wouldn't result in whichever of you or up to two of you spinning your wheels or spending a lot of extra meeting time. So contact me if you want to be involved in that. They'll also embrace that housing problem and the search for tools to prioritize for addressing the housing problem. And I'm sure that that will be more in-depth subcommittee work and not just planning commission meetings and city council meetings. That some outside effort is going to go into that. So there will be subcommittee opportunities for that. They also want to see a comprehensive plan amendments to enshrine some of the downtown plan aspects. And so that'll be on staff to develop the amendment proposal, reporting back to them once in a while. The next amendment cycle for the comprehensive plan will review all applications submitted by September 30th of next year and recommend action during the spring, summer of 2024. So there's time before any of that hits home for you guys. Next week, we're going to the infrastructure conference. Somebody else, I'm probably stealing somebody's thunder on that. We're going to the Infrastructure Assistance Coordinating Council Conference in Wenatchee, where we will learn about several grants and loan programs and how to meet the grant requirements and implement the projects. We'll also have a specific meeting about the Lasher Street to Stevenson Elementary project. That's one where we've got the grant application in for phase one of that to WashDOT and look at how to pair phase one with other potential funding sources. So have specific conversations with those grant makers, those grant reviewers about our project. That's all I got.
Carolyn?
Water, we've been doing some mainline repairs. We had a couple breaks in the last month. The other thing we're looking at are replacements for some of the water treatment plant equipment. Also breaking, also past its life. Wastewater upgrades continue. Kind of a neat, innovative item. The guy that came up and was talking to us about water treatment plant equipment also said there's this great tool for lowering BOD, more localized. So he let us borrow it. We installed it in the pump station just outside LDB. So we'll be able to see with the next couple implement tests whether that's actually helping. Stormwater.
So wait a minute, how does that work? So does the producer bear the cost of that neat little toy, or is it?
Don't know yet. Don't know if it works.
Just looking to see if it works.
Yeah, yeah. They said, hey, here, try it.
And what does it do? How does it filter it? And where does it go?
No, it's like it aerates it.
Yeah. Sorry. It like aerates.
Yeah. How big is it? I don't know. I didn't even realize.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Come down and pick a winner.
I'll find out more. Yeah. It's at they just installed it today.
Devin was excited. He's like, hey, can I do this? I'm like, talk to Carolyn.
Innovation, like that group, like they're all about it, which is cool. Speaking of innovation, this just came to mind. We had a great meeting with our GIS consultant, and we got all of our maps kicked over today that we know of, all the CAD maps and kind of all the random odds and ends in different formats, and they're going to start working on getting a GIS database put together for us. We had a good meeting where we talked about hopes and dreams for digital mapping.
Was that the county doing that for you?
No, it's
private.
Yeah, Washington Association of Cities has a consortium. Yep, and so conveniently we got some hours through the consortium, but then they are also a sub or a part of one of the firms that are gonna be like on-call, so providing on-call services.
One
So-
of the things you may want to take a look at too is the Bureau of Washington Prisons and Oregon Prisons. Both have prisoners that do GIS work as part of their incarceration. They've been trained to do GIS work, and I know that they've done quite a bit, especially in Oregon, with 911 GIS mapping. So
Huh.
just a thought.
That is interesting.
It's pretty low cost.
Would not have thought.
And chain gangs have changed, haven't they?
Swing a mouse instead of a sledgehammer.
Yeah, so we're all very excited about that. I think iPads are also being ordered, and so they'll be able to come online and
So is
the
it
team
gonna
will be able
be
to-
in-house server or cloud server for the GIS?
Great question. That was
Online, and then there's a desktop version for a couple of people, but I think it's cloud hosted. We could confirm
It's all
that.
Esri, right?
Yeah.
I'll find out.
So is that to be used in the field?
Yep.
And
That's
how,
why the handhelds are coming in handy too. So that, according to this, it's right there, but actually it was over there, so it's.
yeah. So, Wi-Fi enabled or cellular enabled.
Yeah.
iPads.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
both?
So.
Huh?
They'll be cellular enabled.
Okay.
they'd be able to pick up Wi-Fi.
And then the built-in.
Yeah.
So it will be able to be used in the field.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so that is, yeah, everyone's stoked on that. Until they start to get until we look at the map and we're like, oh, wow. So see how it goes. But stormwater, we're getting ready for rain, cleaning catch basins, mowing ditches. Interesting to hear, about the concerns with El Paso. So I'll follow up on that. Streets, you probably know some closures. We talked about one. Next week, Rock Creek will be closed one day for striping. And the following week, Columbia Ave will be closed for environmental testing, some boring for that work. So just as a note, we've been providing notification via press release in the paper, text.gov, on our website.
So that's south side, right, by the lot.
Both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just so we don't have to.
Oh, that's
flag.
right.
Yeah, so we don't have to try to flag intersections or ask the sheriff's office to do it. We just are, don't have a whole lot of staff. Next meeting, I'm hopeful to be able to present, or will present a parking and loading zone ordinance change at the next meeting, hopefully. Or maybe it's the first touch, I don't know, never done one yet, so. Another thing between now and the next meeting, just to note, they're gonna do trunk or treat again along Second Street, so that'll be fun. Equipment, we have our vac truck demo on the 24th. So I think I might have mentioned it last time, as we found a potential option for that.
Oh, so we go kick the tires.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're gonna bring it here, and we have a site, I guess, where we need to do some hydro excavation, so they'll kind of show it off. And then another thing for equipment I'm keeping my eyes open for is the opening of contracts to be able to get some replacement trucks, work trucks, on the 1st of November. Last item, you probably saw, we did have a separation in the Public Works Department. So there is a position that is available. It's been advertised in the paper and the website. So if you know anyone's looking, please let them know. We are hiring. That's all.
What kind of a worker is that? Is that general labor or is it
Utility maintenance. So, yeah.
shoveler?
Yeah.
What's the
digger?
what's the salary range?
Oh,
And I'll do rounds.
40 to 60-ish, yeah, or 35 to 55.
Yeah.
I only have,
Not just.
You did,
Yeah, you work your way up.
Not for me.
depending on experience.
That's the thought
If I
process.
want to.
Yeah.
Be here long term,
Yep.
go to school.
It's online. It's on the
Plus
city
lots of
website. It's
good
one of the
benefits.
banners at the top. So easy.
What? Oh, yeah, there was a fire meeting today. The burn ban has been extended to 26.
It's been warm.
So
The 26th. Wow.
as well.
They'll reevaluate.
Yeah, at that time it'll be reevaluated. However, I just learned about Tata's or whatever who does the weather stuff, and
Yeah.
she says
You just
that
found
we're
out about
gonna,
that?
I just found out about that.
She's great.
I know, how have I been here 6 months and no one's told me about it? Because it hasn't been winter.
Yeah. She hasn't had anything exciting to report.
Right, yeah.
Typically you can look outside and see what's going on, but, yeah, she said the 21st, 22nd, so. And it will all be over, it will all be ended. Thanks so much. Any questions?
No?
You have one more thing.
Yeah, one more thing, just, I talked about the healing scars filling a gap for what we saw the community needed, sewer connections. A concept that you all just adopted in the comprehensive plan is a nice neighborhoods program. And this is an acronym that we stole from somewhere else, but it'd be new improvements for community enhancement, nice neighborhoods. And when you start developing the details of a program like that, it will fill another need for that whole conversation where right now, as we program projects, we rely on grants and we rely on spending a certain amount of the project or a certain percentage of the project as a city match to that grant. And so if you all have some sort of policy in place to say that the city will cover X% of a nice neighborhood program request or X% of this utility extension that's necessary for the annexation, or this percent of the road improvement that's necessary for the annexation, that's going to lower that dollar amount. It still creates a burden, it still creates a budgeting conundrum for you, but at least you have a policy in place to have a conversation. Because right now, we just told them, yeah, it's all on you guys, sorry. And that's not the way we operate for city residents when they're in the city. So it's a need. And I don't know what the details are, how that gets done, but that's a program that we can look at standing up and developing more in the future.
Well, and I guess going on that, the reason I asked Carolyn about the road standard, what it would take to bring that road up on. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, we got a real narrow right of way up there. Maybe John donates more right of way for city infrastructure at a later date as part of the trade-off for being able to hook onto the water, you know, those kinds of things. So that's exactly what you're talking about there.
Yeah, there's an in-kind contribution that can reduce the cost.
But I'm sure he wasn't expecting or wouldn't want to pay $1 million to upgrade the road.
So one thing that Ben was mentioning was the shoreline access grant that we have as sort of a kickoff to starting our own parks plan. RCL also has the Recreation and Conservation Office also has a planning grant available. And that will open from October 14th and they're due November 14th. So typically RCO is the one that provides a lot of the grants for doing the construction, but they don't provide funds for planning, and this will at least help us get there, but they require you to have a plan to meet their specifications in order to get that funding. So this is the first time they'll be offering that, so we'll be applying and see what we can do. Columbia Realignment will be having an open house on November 3rd from 4 to 6. I was going to try to put it in the library because you can just see right down where we're going, but they're having their book sale the following day, and so they need to set up with all those amazing books.
Book sale's great.
Right. The other option is I'll be keeping an eye on the weather and maybe we'll see if we can do something on site. Not Columbia, but we'll see. But that will be where we'll have some visuals for people to see what development could look like down there. So that will be, again, November 3rd from 4 to 6.
So if you're keeping score, the downtown plan that you just approved, that was determined as low hanging fruit out of that very plan. So full speed ahead.
So let's see, we have a Laserfiche contract to scan and record some of our data, and that will kick off next week. We have the equipment already. And so we'll work on scanning all the stuff. As I was rearranging some things to make it nice in here, I was looking at some documents that would be very nice to scan and toss. Save up some stuff, but also so that we could find it, because it's like, oh, hey, look, we have this cool data. But unless you know that it's in a spiral bound book that you can't really see where it's at.
It's like spare parts in the shed. If you don't have it, you
Oh,
don't have it.
yeah.
If you don't know it's there,
Right.
it's not.
So we can digitize it so we can do word searches. That would be great. And so new office hours with all this great work we're doing, we are working on trying to be more efficient. And so one of those things is to be closed to the public on Fridays. We're still here, and so we can still schedule meetings if necessary, but the drop-ins will no longer happen on Fridays. So our office hours will be Monday through Thursday from 7:30 to 5.
Do you have
And
any
no phones.
drop-ins on Friday?
Sometimes they're seldom, and it all depends. The county's closed on Fridays, so people think we're closed on Fridays. Yeah. I was gonna say, how we find that we get the most done on Fridays. So, and then, I mean, I'm sure everyone's noticed the new arrangement. So we're also trying out some city hall reconfigurations, again, kind of along that same path. And so if you have time afterwards, there are a couple of plans behind you with different configurations. If you're curious, we'll probably do a combination of them all. But this is one of the council chambers configurations, and will probably be tweaked as we go. But yeah, so feedback would be appreciated on this.
I'm reluctant to give up that for gallery space, but this is manageable. The weird part though is that when 10 people leave and they stop right outside of our meeting. As opposed to going all the way out there, but it's definitely wanted to, when we started looking at those configurations, said, well, let's just try it out. Next city council meeting.
Make a big crowd for it too, so I mean, kind of show.
Tested it out.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
I would entertain a motion to approve the vouchers.
Motion to approve the vouchers as presented.
Second.
First and a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Boom. Do any of you have anything to present for the greater good?
Can we go over the upcoming dates? for city
Yeah,
council?
let's do that. So we've got the, what was it?
Make sure I've got them right.
November 1st. November 17th.
Okay.
December.
Hold on.
November 1st, November 1st is budget.
Yeah,
November
I have that in
November
budget.
budget.
Yeah,
November 17th is your regular November city council meeting.
yeah, I have that too.
And then we have December 14th as their first special workshop. And then December 15th as their council meeting.
Right.
December 15th as a council meeting.
Yeah, correct.
What time's the workshop on the 14th?
6.
So that'll be an agendized item.
It will be, and it'll be published as a special meeting.
Did you mention that?
No, I did not. So, November 15th, 16th, and 17th, staff. So it'll be, Ben, Carolyn, Anders, and myself will be attending the consent building
Yeah.
training. So further training along the workshop that we had. So, Yeah, and those, so that's 3 fairly full day training. So, yeah.
So in January.
So it'll be, it's
are we
the,
back
it's
to the
the,
11th,
this-
the 11th and 19th,
yes.
and the workshop is just on whatever.
The workshop is more on structure and governance. So it's about, I mean, if I had time on November 1st, we could watch like the AWC series on budgeting and then go through the budget. So December could be on the budget, but it could also just be on
Training or whatever.
roles and responsibilities, or yeah.
Well, we could
AWC
go down, tour the new sewer plant. Yeah, okay.
So AWC has a slate of trainings for elected officials. And so we could go through that. We could also do the Open Public Meetings Act and Public Records Act to make sure that everyone has it updated, because you have to have it not just within a certain period of time frame, but when you take office, but then also every 4 years, you have to have a refresher.
So the 1st and the 17th, the city council.
For November, yes.
Okay, I will be online on that, because that's the day before my surgery, so.
Okay, anything that you would like to see on the agenda for the next meeting?
I'm sure I'll hear from the sheriff before the next meeting.
Meeting adjourned 8:40.
Stomach is digesting itself.
Thanks, Ken.